Okay, we're ready to create the IK arms for the character. We've already talked about IK and how it works, and the idea behind using it on the character is going to change depending on which part of the character we're going to be using it on. So you know that IK is used whenever you want to anchor or be able to anchor certain parts of the character to positions in space that have nothing to do with the character. So for example, in the case of the legs of our character, well, legs and feet are usually anchored to the ground. Whenever the character is just standing or walking or running or jumping, they're most of the time anchored to the ground. So we're gonna use IK alone for the legs and feet later on. However, for the arms sometimes need to be anchored to other items in the scene, such as doors or tables or a gun or whatever. And they also need to be able to move very expressively with the rest of the character, like his torso. So we need to use both IK and FK. We've already worked on our FK rig over here. So what we're going to do is create an IK rig, and then our main rig is going to be able to blend in between both depending on what the animator needs. Okay, so to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to select our first joint on the arm. Let's start working on this side. Let's find it in the items list. It's right there. Okay, so we're going to duplicate it. And then we're going to take the duplicate and unparent it in place. So we take it out of the hierarchy. It's always easier and safer to work outside of the rigs hierarchy, and just like in world space, and do our stuff there. And then once we're done, put it back in the hierarchy, the appropriate location. So let's expand this. And we have everything that it was under this joint. It duplicates the entire hierarchy. I don't need the hand, so I'm going to select everything from the hand down, and I'm going to delete it. So I just keep these elements over here: the upper arm, lower arm, and wrist. So let's rename them to IK, IK, and IK. Okay, so we have our IK joints over there, and I'm gonna get rid of the color, which we're not gonna see here, but if you save and reopen the file, you will see they have no more color. And let's change their display properties so they're easier to read as we work with this chain. So what I'm gonna do is get rid of the link drawing, and let's make the spheres bigger. For now, I'm actually later going to make them smaller, but for now I need them to be big so I can see what I'm doing. And lastly, I'm just going to color them. Let's make them red. Something like that. Okay? So that's our IK arm. Now, the IK system that we're going to use, if we go to the IK tab, you will see that it's divided in two. The first part is what it used to be named the full body IK, which is a system that we're going to later look at. But for the arms, we're going to use this dual 2D IK solver. And it's called dual 2D for a couple of reasons. First of all, it can only operate on joint chains with 3 joints. The last one it's considered to be just the point where the chain ends. So basically you actually have 2 joints that count for the solve. The third one doesn't really count for rotations, so that's why it's dual. It only uses the first 2 joints and rotates them. And it's 2D because the IK solution lies on a 2D plane. And let me show you what that actually means. So I'm going to select, you have to select the 3 items, and you have to be in setup mode, and then we can apply the IK. And what happens is the following. You will get this locator created, which is called an IK goal. And that's the point in space towards which the IK solution will try to solve the rotations. Okay? So if I move it right now, you will see that everything rotates accordingly to follow that movement. Now, it's called 2D because the solution lies in a 2D plane. This chain will always solve in a 2D plane because it's basically forming a triangle, and triangles are always planar. So to visualize that plane, I'm going to use, just to show you, the work plane. So I'm going to align the work plane to this object, and I'm going to display it. So this is the plane on which our IK solution lies. And if I take the goal again and I move it and set it to world space so that I'm aligned to the work plane, and I start moving the goal, you will see that at all times our joints lie on the work plane. So it's always a 2D solution, okay? However, you will say, well, there are times where I need this joint over here, which would be the elbow of the character, to not be here, but maybe up here or down here. So what the solver does to achieve that is it actually rotates this 2D plane. And by rotating the plane, you actually rotate the joints on it. And to do that, we're going to use an up vector. So we're going to do that in a second. I just wanted you to understand how the dual 2D solver works. So let's reset the work plane. And let's hide it. We don't need it anymore. So everything is moving correctly. Before anything else happens, I want to check the orientations of my IK chain. So I want to compare against the main rig. We can see that Z is pointing backwards and X is pointing downwards, and my joint over here is doing the same. So now that the IK is done, I can create the up vector. And to do that, I can always select this guy, and let's find him here for a second. And if you don't get to see this create up vector button, it's because you need to select the dual joint planar IK channel modifier under the goal object. It has to be selected. So with that selected, I just say create IK up vector, and I'm gonna get this other locator behind the character. Okay, and this locator is going to allow me to rotate the orientation of the plane for the solve. So as you can see, I can point the elbow of the character in the direction of this object, which is pretty good. So I'm just gonna make sure that my orientations didn't flip, and that's one of the reasons why I decided to take these joints out of the main rig, because sometimes if you do it as part of the main rig, the orientation will flip and it becomes a huge problem. So right now everything is still good, and that's the way we want to keep it. I'm gonna take the chance to rename my objects in here. So this IK up vector, for example, this guy, I'm going to call him, this is not going to be the object we're actually going to move. We're going to constrain this object to something else later on. So I'm just going to call him rig right side arm up vector. Actually, yeah, not rig, it's UPV for up vector R arm IK. Okay, then we're going to take the goal, and this guy I usually call them EFF, which is effector. I sometimes use the terms interchangeably, goal or effector. In some other applications, the two are actually mutually exclusive objects. They're different and they're part of the IK system. So usually the end effector is the one that helps solve the IK solution, and the goal is the point in space towards which they try to reach. Modo doesn't really expose both. We just have a goal, but I just call it effector. So there you go, effector R arm IK. Okay, so we're good, and I'm going to also rename the solver. So this is SOLR for solver arm IK. There we go. So now that everything is properly renamed, you will also notice that we got a group locator created over here that holds all the joints for the IK chain. So this helps us isolate which parts of the character have IK. And actually, if you try to delete this group locator, you're gonna delete the entire IK chain. So don't delete it, just rename it. Let's call it group R arm IK, and we're done. Now we just need to bring it back over to the main rig, and this guy is going to be parented to our clavicle joint over here. Okay, so I'm going to go to setup and do a parent in place, and we're pretty much done. The only thing I'm going to do now is make sure that my up vector object is easily selectable, or at least the one that is going to be with it later on. So I'm going to display the geometry for the character. Yeah, it's okay. It's a little bit too close, so I'm going to move it back. Just remember that in order for us to move this back, if I try to move it back right now, and I just grab it and move it on Z, you will see the IK chain move, and we definitely don't want that. So before I move it, I'm actually going to first just zero out the transforms on these guys. And now, for this to move without disturbing the plane on the IK chain, I need to move it on the plane. So we're going to do that the same way we did it before. I'm just going to align the plane to our middle locator over there, and now I can select my move tool in the world coordinate system, and then I can move it back and not disturb anything. So let's move him over here, let's say, and we're done. Let's just zero out the position again and reset the work plane, and that's it. We can hide the geometry. That's basically our IK arm. The only thing that is left is let's create some control objects to control it with, and let's do also some little maintenance on our rig. The first thing I'm gonna do is this ACE controls group locator, which holds our FK rig. I'm gonna rename it to ACE controls FK. And now make sure nothing is selected. Let's create another group locator, and we're going to call him ACE controls IK. So we're going to put our IK controls in there, and we're going to create another one called ACE IK rig. Okay, we're going to put here objects that belong to the IK rig. So in this case, I'm going to take him, the up vector, and him, and I'm going to move them over to the IK rig folder, parented in place. Okay, and let's color this guy. Let's make him green. And the IK controls are going to be orange. There you go. And let's now create the controls for the IK system. So I'm going to create a locator, and I'm going to change the display to be a nice box. Let's make him smaller, and I'm going to match it to I'm gonna match this guy to the up vector object, and we can still make him smaller than that. There you go, something along those lines. And we're gonna call him CTL for control R arm up vector. Or you can call him elbow aim, or anything that will help you identify it. And we're going to put him inside the controls IK group locator. Let's open that up. And now we're going to create another locator. We're also going to make him a box for now. And also let's make him smaller. And I'm going to match it to our effector. It's going to be right there. And him we are going to call CTL R arm. This is going to move the entire arm, actually IK arm, so that we know, even though it's inside of the IK folder, now it is, we know it's the IK control. And now we need to constrain these guys to them. Okay, so we're going to take him and add a position constraint. We don't care about the rotations because rotating the effector or the up vector has no effect on the IK chain. So now this guy is going to be constrained to this guy. Also position. And let's test the rig out. It moves following our new control object, and it rotates following our new control object for the elbow. So it's done. Let's lastly also color these guys red, just for me to know that it's IK. Oops. Draw options. And again, we're gonna make that a deep red. There we go. And we're gonna make our IK joints small. I'm gonna put them inside in there. Yeah. So that's it. We have our IK arm working. So you can do the other side by yourself. It's, as you see, it's pretty simple. The important part here is to remember to check the orientations of the IK joints to the main rig joints at all times to make sure they're the same, because otherwise when we get to the blending later on, we're gonna have tons of headaches if they were not. So that's it. I'll let you get to it, and in the next videos we're gonna be setting up the IK clavicle for our character. Okay, see you later. Okay, I'm adding this little section to show you something that I noticed as I was working on the opposite side of the character, and that very likely you'll have to face too. And it's a little problem, but it's not something really major, but we need to fix it. So I'm going to show you what that is. I've already created the IK arm, and I've created the IK solver on it. So when I go ahead and create the up vector, you will see that the arm flips. It's now facing the opposite way. And also the orientation of our objects has flipped. Like in this case, because it's a mirror arm, we need that to be looking pointing forward, and now it's pointing backwards. So we need to know what to do about it. And right now our up vector control is behind the character, which is where we want him, because the other one was also behind the character. So what we need is to be able to flip the chain so it's facing the other way while keeping the up vector on this side of the character. And the way we do that is if we go to the effector object and we select the dual joint planar IK solver that was created with it, you'll see that it has two properties. The one we're interested in is this orient property. This allows us to rotate, as I had explained, the plane around the center of the triangle that the IK chain is. So what I'm going to do is rotate it 180 degrees, and everything goes back into place. So if I check my orientations again, pointing forward, everything is back to normal. We can take this friend, move it, the chain rotates perfectly, and our effector also is working fine. So that's all I wanted to show you, how to solve this little problem, and well, that's it. Let's move on.